Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Faiqa Mansab. I'm the author of This House of Clay and Water and the Sufi Storyteller, which is coming out in March 2025. I've been writing all my life, but I was published in 2017 for the first time as a novelist. But I've been published before in newspapers and magazines and anthologies. Writing is my passion. It's something that I've done all my life. And even when there was no chance of getting published, I was still writing because it's something that I love to do. It's something that gives me peace and a sense of purpose, something that I enjoy immensely. I think it's something which makes me know myself. I am most myself when I'm writing. I don't pretend. I don't have to pretend to be, anyone else, which I think normally in life you do. You take up roles and you take up these masks. But when you're writing, or at least when I'm writing, I am not catering to any expectations. It's something that I do for myself, and I'm most honest when I'm writing. Where did it start? I think it started from my childhood, because my parents were both big readers. I grew up surrounded with books. My home was, there were shelves and shelves of books and magazines. Music was a big thing in our household, which meant poetry. So I think all of these things contributed to my early awareness of literature. And because our household was trilingual, we grew up with Punjabi and Urdu and English, and therefore all the literatures of these three languages were at my disposal. So Punjabi poetry was something that I was exposed to very early on, and my father wrote Punjabi poetry as well as Urdu poetry. And although he was a politician, this was something that he did for himself. So I guess this is awareness of writing for yourself, writing to express something that perhaps you don't express in your normal life, was something that I saw around me. I got my early education from the Convent of Jesus and Mary. Then we went to Kinnaird, and this is something that all the women in our family did. So it was convent and then Kinnaird. And after that, marriage. And that's the trajectory that I followed. But I didn't stop studying. After marriage, I went on to do Masters in Literature, MPhil in Literature, and then MFA in Creative Writing from the UK. Kingston University London, and it was a wonderful decision. I think it was a great decision to do my MFA from Kingston, because I got to meet Elif Shafaq, who was my supervisor. I met Hanif Qureshi, who was teaching there, and Rachel Cusk was also one of the teachers. So all these wonderful teachers that I'd been reading and admiring were there, and you realize that they're just human. If they can do it, I can do it. And I think these were influences and inspiration that helped me. This House of Clay and Water was my thesis during my MFA at Kingston. I'd written about 50,000 words already when I went to Kingston. But a lot of it was thrown out because, I was rewriting it, and I was getting perhaps, a purpose. I already had the plot. I knew the characters that I wanted to write. So that was not something that I developed there. What I developed, I think, was a more keen sense of narrative, which is, more structured perhaps. Because before that, I was just looking towards characters. I'm a character-based writer. I don't normally go for plot-based novels. It is the character that calls to me, and it's the character that I write about, and the plot sort of follows. This House of Clay and Water is the same way. It was Nida's voice that called to me first, and I started writing about Nida. And then came, Sasha and Bhangi and the other characters. But these are the three main characters, and it is about their life and how they, the choices we make is what makes us, it makes our lives, it affects other people in our lives. So that's something that I'm very keenly aware of, something I think perhaps is also a fear, making the wrong choice and then living with the consequences. Because how often is it that you can redo that part of your life? It's rare. So certain choices you have to live with. I think these three characters are keenly aware of life around them, the social constraints that they have to live in, and perhaps personality constraints as well. Who we are begins from birth. Who are your parents? What kind of environment are you going to live in? What kind of education you've had? What are the opportunities you've been blessed with? All of these together and so much more makes who you are. But there is a core, I think, that we are born with. And that core, that is, I think, our soul, that is what responds to everything around us. And if we are able to keep our soul as pure as we can, I think that's the test. And I think that's what it's all about. My main theme is always the human being there. And it's not just the life that we live here, but the life that no one else sees, which is within. And those choices, those decisions, those perhaps the very being which is within has a much longer life than the one we live here. And that life is very much present when, even in my own daily life, it's not something that I am just doing while I'm writing. I think in writing you cannot pretend. In writing, what you are comes across very clearly. So perhaps that's why my writing leans towards spirituality, because it's something that I grew up with. My grandmother was very spiritual. My parents were both very spiritual people. And our upbringing reflected that. For example, one of the things that was constantly instilled in us was not to be arrogant, not to be vain, to be humble. Funnily enough, it's something that a lot of people say to me even now, around, not just me, but, my sisters, my extended family as well, that we don't come across as proud or arrogant, no matter what we achieve. And alhamdulillah, I think this is another thing that my mother inculcated in me, which is to, be ambitious. And I say this in every interview. My mother was a great lover of Allama Iqbal. So we were raised with a lot of Allama Iqbal's poetry. मोहब्बत मुझे उन जवानों से है सितारों पे जो डालते हैं कमन उठो मेरी दुनिया के गरीबों को जगा दो खाके उमरा के दरो दीवार हिला दो. So when you're raised with these, you tend to be very ambitious. You tend to go for the stars. And I think my sisters and I, those people who know us will bear witness that there's nothing that we feel we cannot achieve. Women did not pursue education after their marriage. No doubt, I must give credit to my husband, who gave me that support and who pushed me to follow my dreams as well. So I was very lucky that way, alhamdulillah. So what I'm saying is that perhaps a writer is not just one thing. There are several factors that come into play. My mother, I feel, was a thwarted writer. If she had had more support, she would have been a writer as well, but she didn't have that support. I was lucky to have that support, alhamdulillah. A lot of people ask me that, how do you get your ideas? Why did you write this book? Where did this character come from? Was it from life around you? Honestly, I have no idea where the ideas come from. I think it's a very organic process. I'm sure life spills into one's writing, but it's not a conscious thing, I think, at least not for me. Because the Sufi Storyteller, now that it's close to being published, I realize, because now I'm taking interviews about this book, and people ask me this, and that makes me think, why did I write this or what? So I think it started off from my MPhil thesis, which is a comparative study on Sufism and Jostein Gaarder, who is a Norwegian writer. And I took 3 of his books, Sophie's World, Maya, and The Solitaire Mystery. These 3 books are, Maya and Solitaire Mystery are connected. Sophie's World is a separate book. So while I was reading Jostein Gaarder's novels, I saw how, the themes and the archetypes and the storytelling techniques reflected to me a lot of Sufi themes and etc., which is what my thesis is about. I had already been reading, on Sufism and about Sufis, Sufi poetry. So perhaps that is why I was able to see those themes and techniques and everything. Because I had to write that thesis, I think I dove very deep into the Sufi research. And it's something that I have, continued to do. I continue to read not just on Sufism and of Sufis, but what Sufis themselves have written, their work, which is very dense. It's a little hard to understand, so it takes time to read and to engage with it. But it's something that I do because I'm passionate about not just learning, but learning about Sufism. So that thread, I think, continued. And I also read a lot of other books. I love fantasy, I love children's literature, I love murder mystery, especially Agatha Christie. So I don't know when it happened, but I just thought, how interesting would it be to have a murder which is connected to stories, murders happening which reflect the stories that we've grown up with, and then perhaps even Sufi storytelling. And that's how I started thinking of it. And one day I had Meera, who is one of the main characters of the novel, and then came Laila, who is the protagonist. And, the story came together. And this story, this novel is perhaps more plot-oriented than my other work. However, it is still character-driven. So it is these 2 women who drive the narrative, who drive the story, and it's sort of entrenched. The whole novel is entrenched in the character, in the lives of these 2 women. And yes, it's about murder, but murder is a subplot. The main plot of the novel is the relationship of this mother and daughter, and the relationship of these 2 women with stories and with Sufi storytelling in particular. The Sufi Storyteller is coming out in March 2025, and it is available on Amazon. It's being published by UK as well as Penguin India, and most probably the UK edition will also be available in Pakistan. For young writers, I would like to say, read as much as possible. People who don't read cannot be very brilliant writers, I feel. And the reason I say that is because when I do anything, I want to do it to the best of my ability. I don't want to just do things. I want to do it as well as it can be done. So when I wanted to be a writer, when I felt I was like, by the age of 11, I was certain that I was going to be a writer. And it is because I was reading a lot. And the pleasure that reading gave me and the comfort that reading gave me, I wanted to be able to do that for others. One day I wanted someone else to say, oh, you know, this writer made me feel the way I felt when I read Jane Austen and Charlotte Bronte and, you know, all these wonderful writers that one grows up with. So reading is a very essential part of writing. It gives you understanding of human nature, depth of language and expression. And without these, how can you possibly be a good writer? So read as much as possible. I would like to mention a few writers from Pakistan like Awais Khan, who does creative writing courses. The Writing Institute is a wonderful place to go for young writers to learn from. Other Pakistani writers like Shahnana Minhas, Naima Rashid, Osama Siddiq. You know, these are wonderful writers to read. Sonia Kamal. Read these novelists because they write about what is around us. And we can connect with their language, with their writing. So read these novelists and learn from them.